For the Evo 1, we are going to attach the battery on the back here, and then attach the D-tap with the curved part pointing towards the back. Then we can boot up the camera and boot up the monitor by holding down that button. That big battery should power everything. And then we can take off the lens cap, and we can see that we are at 357 degree shutter, ISO 800, and 3400 K white balance with plus 0.8 tint. You can always make sure that you have no ND filters on with this button here. Make sure that your aperture is wide open. On the top here, just pull this ring all the way down, and that should be pretty good exposure. So at 800 with an f2 lens should be good exposure for our services. If we do have to adjust ISO, you click this down. If we need a bit more brightness, you can go up a little bit. Ideally 800 is the best for this camera, so you can slightly close if you have a little bit of overexposure happening. So you can slightly close the aperture there. The image stabilization button is here, the EIS. And you want to make sure that it is on usually, but with this rig, it has a little bit of weight to it, so it actually might be easier to keep it smooth if you do want it off and need a bit more width. If your white balance is off, you can actually go click this switch up to WB, and this little scroll wheel here will allow you to go up and down between our presets, but it should be at 3400 plus 0.8. So then you can click that into the middle so you don't accidentally bump it, because that happens as well. For the GH5, we put one of these batteries in. This one says Panasonic, but we have a couple like off-brand ones, but they have these 4 little metal tabs there. It goes in the bottom of the camera, close it, lock it, and then we have our V-mount battery. Then we can slide onto the back here, click it in. We'll need to attach the D-tap with the curved side going back, and the USB. This is for the converter, the SDI converter. That will send the signal to the switcher, and that clicks onto the USB port there, so you can power the converter. The monitor comes on right away, but there's a power switch on the far left there as well. And then this switch the camera on, and here we'll take the lens cap off, and you can see it doesn't like that there's no memory card in there, but we make sure we're at a 360 degree shutter as well. With an f1.4 lens on it, we're finding about an ISO of 160. But if you need to adjust the ISO, or if it gets adjusted on you, this dial here will bring it up and down. So 160 is pretty good for an f1.4 lens wide open, but you can bring it up and down if you really need to. The video director will tell you. And also, if that doesn't say 360 degrees shutter, then you adjust this wheel right here to make sure it's at 360. And that should be about it for this one. White balance, we have a custom white balance. Can we tap it there? I'll press the WB button on the top. And it should be set at 3400 Kelvin. And we have a little bit of a tint on it too. But if it's at 3400, then it's probably on the right one. So I'll switch it off. For the Pocket 6K, it's typically a little bit simpler because we don't typically have a monitor. There's often a handle on top, but we power everything from this V-mount battery. Click that in. We will plug in the D-tap with the curved side towards the back, and we will plug in the USB to the top of the battery, which I guess over on the right side. Right here. You can see that. That will power the SDI converter, and we can power up the camera. And we'll take the lens cap off for now. And we will typically, one handy thing is if you press the lines here and you go to presets, we actually have an auditorium setting. So you just click on the auditorium and press the check mark. Right there. It'll load that preset, which should be good for our services. But we may have to, so it's our 59.94, 359.6 shutter, which is 360 degree shutter roughly, and ISO 1250. Might have to boost that up, depending on the brightness, on where you're placing this on stage. So 1600 might be what you do. White balance is already set to 3300, which is the closest match we can get to the 3400 look of the other cameras. And it's pretty simple. Everything's touchscreen, so you can adjust things. And this power switch is up there. There is some quick functions if you want to check out the false color. Pink is usually a good skin tone that you want to be trying to get there. But that's the LUT. So if it's looking extra flat, that middle button probably was pressed to get your contrast back, and that gets sent on as well to the switcher. And the third button is actually whether you're sending these lines, all this words, to the switcher or not. So you got to be able to make sure that that's toggled on or toggled off. I'm not sure what it's on right now. And that's about it for the Pocket 6K.